This concept of property as a mere enlargement of the personality is not refuted but rather is strongly confirmed by cases in which the self-awareness of the personality has been transposed from the core of the ego to its surrounding layers, to property. In the same way, the interpretation of proliferation and of family formation as an expansion of the ego is not affected by the fact that direct self-interests can recede behind the children's interests. In medieval England it was a mark of bondage if one was not allowed to give away one's daughter or sell an ox without the lord's permission. In fact, whoever was entitled to do so was considered to be free, even if he had to render personal services. That self-awareness has transcended its immediate boundaries, and has become rooted in objects that only indirectly concern it, really proves to what extent property as such means nothing other than the extension of the personality into the objects and, through its domination of them, the gaining of its sphere of influence. This explains the strange phenomenon that sometimes the sum total of possessions appears to be identical with the totality of the personality. There was a certain class of serfs in medieval France whose legal right it was to enter the state of freedom if they gave over all their property to the lord. Such an interpretation has a number of consequences for the understanding of different types of property. If freedom means that the will may be realized unhampered, then we seem to be freer the more we own, since we have accepted as the meaning of property that we can do whatever we want with its content. We do not have freedom to do so with other people's property or with objects which cannot be possessed at all. Therefore the Latin, and for a long time also the German, language associated the meaning of the word freedom with that of privilege, or of a special favor, precisely in the sense of our interpretation of freedom. Only the nature of the object owned limits this freedom itself. This is already manifest in relation to our body, which we consider our own totally unrestricted property. The body obeys psychic impulses only within the laws of its own constitution, and certain movements and performances cannot be requested by our will with any success at all. Such is the case with all other objects. The freedom of my will in relation to a piece of wood that I own extends as far as my being able to carve all kinds of tools out of it, but as soon as I want to make a tool that requires the elasticity of rubber or the hardness of stone, my freedom diminishes. What our will is able to do with things is comparable with what an artist can elicit from his instrument. No matter how deeply his emotions and artistry may penetrate his instrument, no matter whether the limits of his powers are predetermined, somewhere such limits do exist. Beyond a certain point, the structure of the instrument does not permit any further yielding to the power of the soul. That is the point at which things no longer belong to us. At the present time, we easily overlook the fundamental limits of ownership when our disrupted adaptations and unbridled strivings after freedom and possessions cause us to demand of objects innumerable things which they cannot possibly provide by virtue of their own and our nature. I recall here the lack of understanding, which has only very recently been corrected, of the substance of art, and the fact that we increasingly tend to expect happiness and peace of mind predominantly from external conditions of life, true culture from technological progress, and contentment and perfection of the individual from the objective structure of society. By and large, the will is so adjusted to our conditions of life that it does not expect from objects what they cannot perform, and the limitation of our freedom by the inherent laws of possession does not result in positive experiences. Despite this, it would be possible to construct a scale of objects based on the extent to which the will can take command of them and the point on this scale at which they become impenetrable, or the extent to which they can really be possessed. Money would be located at the extreme end of such a scale. That unattainable entity that other objects, as it were, reserve for themselves and which is denied to even unlimited ownership, has completely disappeared in the case of money. Money lacks that structure by which other specific objects, even if we legally own them, refuse to yield to our will. It adjusts with equal ease to every form and every purpose that the will wishes to imprint it with. Obstacles may spring only from the objects that lie behind it. Money itself complies equally with every directive with regard to the object, the extent of expenditure, the speed of spending or retaining. In this manner, money grants to the self the most complete freedom to express itself in an object, although only within the limits set by its own lack of specific qualities. Such limits, however, are merely negative and not a result of money's own positive nature, as is the case with all other objects. All that money is and has to offer is given without reservation to the human will and is completely absorbed by the will. When money can no longer achieve this, then this is due to the fact that nothing remains of money beyond that limit which, for all other objects, represents a reserved and unyielding part of their existence. Formally, money is both the most responsive and, because of its complete emptiness, the most irresponsive object. Since the money we own belongs to us absolutely and without reservation, we are unable, in other words, to extract anything more from it. In general, it is true to say that an object can mean something to us only by being substantially something in itself, only then, to the extent that the object sets limits to our freedom, does it give way to our freedom. This logical antithesis, in whose tension the unity of our behavior towards objects is realized, reaches its maximum in money. Money means more to us than any other object of possession because it obeys us without reservation, and it means less to us because it lacks any content that might be appropriated beyond the mere form of possession. We possess it more than anything else, but we have less of it than all other objects. The flexibility of money, as with so many of its qualities, is most clearly and emphatically expressed in the stock exchange, in which the money economy is crystallized as an independent structure just as political organization is crystallized in the state. The fluctuations in exchange prices frequently indicate subjective psychological motivations, which, in their crudeness and independent movements, are totally out of proportion in relation to objective factors. It would certainly be superficial, however, to explain this by pointing out that price fluctuations correspond only rarely to real changes in the quality that the stock represents. For the significance of this quality for the market lies not only in the inner qualities of the state or the brewery, the mine or the bank, but in the relationship of these to all other stocks on the market and their conditions. Therefore, it does not affect their actual basis if, for instance, large insolvencies in Argentina depress the price of Chinese bonds, although the security of such bonds is no more affected by that event than by something that happens on the moon. For the value of these stocks, for all their external stability, none the less depends on the overall situation of the market, the fluctuations of which, at any one point, may for example make the further utilization of those returns less profitable. Over and above these stock market fluctuations, which even though they presuppose the synthesis of the single object with others are still objectively produced, there exists one factor that originates in speculation itself. These wagers on the future quoted price of one stock themselves have the most considerable influence on such a price. For instance, as soon as a powerful financial group, for reasons that have nothing to do with the quality of the stock, becomes interested in it, its quoted price will increase. Conversely, a bearish group is able to bring about a fall in the quoted price by mere manipulation. Here the real value of the object appears to be the irrelevant substratum above which the movement of market values rises only because it has to be attached to some substance, or rather to some name. The relation between the real and final value of the object and its representation by a bond has lost all stability. This clearly shows the absolute flexibility of this form of value, a form that the objects have gained through money and which has completely detached them from their real basis. Now value follows, almost without resistance, the psychological impulses of the temper, of greed, of unfounded opinion, and it does this in such a striking manner since objective circumstances exist that could provide exact standards of valuation. But value in terms of the money form has made itself independent of its own roots and foundation in order to surrender itself completely to subjective energies. Here, where speculation itself may determine the fate of the object of speculation, the permeability and flexibility of the money form of values has found its most triumphant expression through subjectivity in its strictest sense. The possession of money and the self in the light of this, the extension of the self that the possession of money signifies is a very distinctive one. In one sense it is the most complete extension that can be derived from an object. In another sense it is a very limited one because money's flexibility is only that of an extremely liquid body which takes on any form, and does not shape itself but receives any form it may possess only from the surrounding body.